Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man, they say murdered three? Strange things that happen here, how stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris James. Tonight with us is Noe Torres. Noe is a recognized expert in the field of UFOs and the paranormal. Noe is an author, publisher, and member of the Mutual UFO Network, better known as MUFON. He holds a bachelor's degree in English and a master's in library science from the University of Texas in Austin. He has written one of the most popular books about the famous Roswell incident, titled Ultimate Guide to the Roswell UFO Crash, which is the top-selling book amongst tourists visiting Roswell, New Mexico. Noe also wrote the critically acclaimed book, The Real Cowboys and Aliens, UFO Encounters of the Old West, as well as a number of other well-reviewed books, including Mexico's Roswell, The Other Roswell, Aliens in the Forest, A Fallen Angel, and The Coyone Incident. Noe has appeared on a number of nationally broadcast television shows, including Season 2, Episode 1 of the Travel Channel's Mysteries of the Outdoors, titled Strange Attractions, which premiered in August 2017. In that show, he is interviewed intensively about unexplained mysteries in the Big Bend National Park. Also in 2017, Noe was featured in an episode titled The Marfa Lights for the TV series Mysteries of the Unexplained. In 2008, he appeared in Season 1, Episode 4 of the History Channel's UFO Hunters in the show called Crash and Retrieval. Noe has appeared 6 times on George Norrie's famous radio show, Coast to Coast AM, as well as the Jeff Rentz program, and many other radio shows. He is also in high demand as a speaker at UFO and paranormal conferences and festivals. Having been a featured speaker at the 2017 International UFO Congress in Scottsdale, Arizona. He's also spoken 5 times at the annual Roswell UFO Conference and at many other UFO conferences throughout the United States and Mexico. Welcome to our show, sir.
Well, Chris, I am so thrilled to be with you tonight. It is a pleasure to be on your show, and I greatly appreciate being invited. And I'm excited about talking about some incredible stuff that's been happening in the area of Texas where both you and I reside. So, yeah, I'm glad to be on tonight. Thank you.
How did you get caught up in the whole UFO investigation?
Well, a lot of people point to some dramatic event, such as a close-up sighting that happened to them that got them interested in the field. But with me, it wasn't that at all. It was a lifetime of reading about UFO encounters, doing research, extensive research, collecting many, many books, and talking to many people. But most, on a most personal level, as a child, my mom told me about a UFO encounter that she had in the 1940s in South Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley, when she was alone at her home one night, and she had this amazing encounter out in a dark wood behind our family's home at the time. I was not yet born, but when I came along several years later, and when I was a child, she would tell me about this amazing encounter she had one night, late at night. And so after that, I just would rush to the library. I was a big library user from a very early age. My parents would encourage reading, and I read basically every book on UFOs and the paranormal that my local libraries had, my school library and the local public library. So I became an avid reader of the literature, and later became a librarian, having this love of books instilled in me and carrying it forward. I took the librarian training in Austin, became a librarian, and have been a librarian for over 30 years now. And every library that I've worked at, I have an extensive collection of books on UFOs and the paranormal, because I think it's a subject that many, many people are highly interested in, and so I try to promote that. I also talk to school children often about my books. I do talks about my books, as well as appearing at conferences and other events. So it's been a lifetime of great interest on my part in this subject matter, which continues to this day, Chris.
Yeah, I can remember back when I was in school trying to find any kind of books on UFOs, on cryptozoology, on anything considered to be abnormal at the time, and sometimes you really had to do some searching just to find a few volumes.
Well, looking back, I wonder if there was somebody who, in the school district where I went to school, there must have been somebody associated with the library that was really into the paranormal and UFOs, because we had, there was one library that was shared by all the grades. I went to a very small district in South Texas called Sherryland, and everybody from kindergarten to 12th grade used the same library in the same building. It was compartmentalized into, books for the lower grades and books for the middle school level and books for the high school. But within that district library, where I remember extensive number of books about UFOs and the paranormal, and a great collection of science fiction, all the great classics, Robert Heinlein, Isaac Asimov, Ray Bradbury. Those were the books that captured my attention as a youngster, and so I guess it's no mystery that I'm still interested in those topics very much, so even today, many years later.
Mm-hmm. The kids today don't realize how much better it is when you can get on a computer and find tons of information. You don't have to walk all the way to the library. Could you tell our listeners... Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that it's not the same to interact with electronic information. In the opinion of many, including many scholars, there's a lot more rewarding times in digging the information out for yourself. It contributes to your growth intellectually and spiritually to seek the information out yourself and to dig it out of books on your own, through your own efforts. It just comes a little too easy electronically, and there's a lot of inaccurate or downright false information. So I would caution everybody to go out and look things up for themselves and not just take somebody else's word for it.
Mm-hmm. I have this huge library that sits right here to my right, and some of these books I've had for years, and I still use them a lot whenever I'm doing any kind of research.
Oh, I love it. You should see my huge closet full of UFO books here that I'm looking at right now. It's just many years' worth of collecting.
Tell our listeners about the 1966 incident there in Edinburg.
This is one of the most bizarre UFO stories that I've run across, and what's really, really interesting is that it happened right here in my backyard, and what's even more interesting is, having lived here my entire life, I only recently found out about this incident. But the truth is that the first-hand witness who finally came forward and about 4 or 5 years ago and contacted me, Mr. Joe Ponce, he was hesitant to talk about it for many, many years. He held it under wraps. his dad, who was the sheriff's deputy that was dispatched out to the site of the UFO incident back in 1966, became a very, very well-known politician. He became the county judge for Hidalgo County, Mr. J.J. Emil Afonso, and he's very well known even today. We have a county park that's named after him, not too far from where I'm sitting doing this interview tonight. So his son, who went out to the site with him as well and witnessed the aftermath of this incredible event, was told by his dad to keep the knowledge of this incident under wraps. As the story develops, we'll see how that happens, but this is the reason why a lot of people here in this area had not heard about it until Joe Ponce, the primary witness, the son of Milo Ponce, who is deceased as of some years ago, had not come forward to tell this amazing story until very recently, the last few years. And so we can just go right into the story, Chris, if you want me to just chronologically tell what happened.
Sure thing. That would be fantastic. I'm sure there's a few people out there that aren't familiar with the story.
So Joe Ponce was a youngster back in 1966. He was in his early 20s, I believe, if memory serves. And he was, his dad, he remembers, he said, lying in bed when the phone call came at about midnight. And the phone call was from the sheriff's department. His dad, Emil Afonso, was a deputy with the sheriff's department at that time. And the phone call came telling him that something very strange had happened north of town, north of Edinburg, Texas, here in the Rio Grande Valley, and that it happened out at a ranch, and that mysterious goings-on were happening out there. And so the gentleman who was talking to Sheriff's Deputy Ponce was actually the dispatcher for the sheriff's department. And he was describing this chaotic scene and some men, some construction workers who were standing by the side of the road out there and were trying to flag down traffic, were looking very, very confused and agitated. And in fact, they were just simply described as crazy men out by the road. So what these construction workers were, they were 8 construction workers from North Texas that were down here digging a gravel pit, or what we call a caliche pit. They had been hired by the owner of the ranch, Mr. Sam Gonzalez, and they were actually, they had a small encampment out there where they were doing their work, and they have a lot of heavy machinery. They had, earth movers and caterpillars, and they had their pickup trucks parked there, and they were living in a small little RV camper. So they were actually working at the site, conducting this excavation, and they were also living out there, spending the nights out there. So what happened was, and Sheriff Ponce found out after he made contact with the men and brought them to the sheriff's department because they refused to go back to where the incident happened. What he found out is that these men had had some sightings on previous occasions of strange objects out there, but on this particular night, they had already retired for the evening. They were in their small RV when something outside caught their attention. A lot of noise, and the wind seemed to pick up, and there seemed to be a very intense storm. However, there were no storms that were expected for the area, and when they looked outside, it seemed to be storming only directly around their encampment. Everything seemed clear. The weather seemed clear all around them, except for that immediate area where they were. And there was a strange object above their camp, which, as they came out and looked, there seemed to be a sudden beam of light or some type of fire, a fiery beam that came down out of the clouds. The men all scattered because that beam hit their RV where they had been staying, and it started literally melting it in front of their eyes. And everything around their camp started catching fire. All the Caterpillar, all the construction equipment, all of their tools, the pickup trucks. So they just basically they headed for the hills. They ran away from there as quickly as they could to the nearest road, and started trying to, flag down some of the cars that were passing by. And that's how the sheriff's department was notified about these crazy men. And when Joe Ponce, the son of the sheriff's deputy, Mr. Emil Afonso, who responded to this incident, when he went out there with his dad the next day, he says he remembers vividly seeing the entire encampment where the construction workers had been working had been totally burned and incinerated. And it's very, very interesting, Chris, because even today, and I've been out to the site several times, and we went out there and did a filming with a local TV station last year, and even today you can find pieces of totally incinerated metal, charred and blackened metal. You can also find rocks that are blackened from the intense heat. And so it was quite a story that these men. Now they were taken back to the sheriff's department because they didn't want to go back to the site and try to find any of their possessions. They just gave it all up. They didn't want to go back. They were terrified. In fact, what struck Joe Ponce very vividly, and he remembers to this day, is how these were very rough and tumble construction workers from the Dallas